I'm going to start tearing this carburetor apart. I do have a carb kit for this carburetor, and I'm going to take the tag off first. I'm not going to video undoing all the fasteners, but I'll show you there is like one down in here. I mean, it's just easier if you take this out. And again, the tag. It's 702 512. It looks like maybe an 8 is the last digit. That's a D6. It looks like a 0F and then a 11. Alright, let me pull the top, get the screws out. I'm not going to video undoing screws because, you know, it's just a matter of doing this. And that's kind of boring to watch. So I took this off just to get it out of my way. This is like a float vent that opens up when the carburetor's at idle. When you give the carburetor gas, that closes down on that hole there. And I do that because you really need to take the linkage this off to get, I mean, you can get at this screw here. I can get it out, but sometimes it's easier if you just take the, if you're overhauling the carburetor, you're going to take it all apart anyway. So you can get that screw out without taking this arm off, but like I say, you know, if you're rebuilding your complete carburetor, it's all got to come off anyway. So, oops, that clip got caught in there. Little spring clip like things. The kit comes with those new, so generally you don't need to save them, but I do. You never know when you lose one, you know what I mean? And there is one longer screw in the top of the carburetor, so that would be this screw. Otherwise they're all the same length, including this one that's buried down in here. Alright, that one's loose, so I'll take it out when you know what I should do is take that fuel filter thing off too. I'm going to see if I can get this loose before, I might have put some screws. See, this is the only longer one in the, you can see the difference in length. So the longest one goes right there, and all the rest of the screws are the same size. At top, the choke linkage was already off, so I'm not going to bother showing removing that because, like I say, that was off. And I'll take the fast idle cam off over here. Probably need a bigger, fatter screwdriver. That's, you take this off and then you can take the fast idle cam and this rod for the fast idle off. But this carburetor I think is going to be in okay shape. I don't really see a lot other than it's just super nasty dirty. You can see it just unscrews, and then it's like got a little like things on it here so it holds it in there. And where did I put the screw for the fast idle cam? Did I put it in there? I like to keep all the screws in my, so, you know, I'll put some fluid in there and clean all those fasteners up. Yeah, it needs, it's cruddy. It needs cleaning up and rebuilding. We'll check all those floats and everything, make sure they're okay. Look at that accelerator pump is, wow, that thing's like a brick. It's even the rubber boot here. Yeah, even the rubber on this boot here is so stiff I can not eat. Usually you can push these out with your fingers. Yeah, this has been sitting for a long time for the rubber to At least it's not totally disintegrated though, but you can see that. Look at it, just splits when I go to move it. The plastic is not loose on the pump rods, so the plastic's good. I'll save the plastic. I can always put new rubber on there in the future if I need another one of these plastic things. That's what's happened to the Bel Air. The ethanol and the gas ruined the plastic, and then that accelerator pump didn't work. Kit comes with new ones of those, so I'm not going to put those back in. These little springs off the float so I don't lose them. Doesn't sound like anything's in the float, but we'll clean them up and make sure that they don't leak. Yeah, this thing's it's obviously been sitting for a while. You get a little pair of pliers and pull that pin out. There we go. Put the spring in there. That float sounds good. That one's good. Actually, decent gasket. You can see all the plating on there is still in nice shape. That works. Needle and seat, or I should just say needle. Look at the, can you see the groove worn in that one? They both actually have little grooves where they seated. And I'm going to get those out so I can need a big fat screwdriver. Hang on again. Okay, that's obviously what I'm using. It's a little big, but oh wow, these things aren't even in there tight. I wonder if they leak gas around this, you know, where they seat in there. There's the gasket. The old parts I'm not. The parts like you get in the kit, yeah, I'm just going to leave them aside. The floats don't come in the kit, but they're okay sitting there on the bench. But like this stuff will all come in the kit, that'll come in the kit. Oh wow, yeah, that one was just as loose. I saved the parts because I like to compare to the new to the old to make sure they're, you know, they're all good. You know, the correct ones. Gasket's kind of stuck in there. There we go. There's the gasket. Alright, I need to get that fill filter out, and then this is ready for the parts washer. And you can see the insides of the float bowls. This one looks like it had some water or something in it at one time. See how it's all, but that just flakes right off and cleans right up. The jets on both sides are clean. I don't know if you can see down in there or not, but they're nice and clean. I'm going to take out, wow, these aren't even tight. Wow. This is a special screw. Well, sometimes they are. Maybe this is the wrong screw. Usually the center screw for the accelerator pump is different, so you got to make sure you put the right screws in the right places. This might not have been assembled right. And another thing too, when you clean these carburetors, make sure all these little holes throughout, everything is all clear. And I always save these gaskets to compare to the new ones to make sure, because the kit usually comes with a bunch of those. I'll just leave that on there for now and continue disassembling taking the other one out. This one has little things they sit down into. Well, I might need a pick to get that one out. The rear doesn't use an accelerator pump. The rear venturis, the secondaries. Yeah, thought maybe they mixed the screws up, but Apparently not. Yeah, I always take everything I can apart on them. If you miss something, then you end up with, you know, a carburetor that doesn't function properly. So, and these screws are real tiny here, as you can see. I think it comes with a new gasket for that too. Get this other piece of linkage off. This is for the accelerator pump. This just has one of those little wire clips on it too. Just gets it all out of the way. And take the choke assembly off. Hopefully the camera, yep, the battery. I'm using a camera I haven't used since last year when I did the valances on the Chevy. I'm using one of my old GoPros. It's kind of stuck to the bench here, and I got new choke covers. This one's busted, so I'm not too worried. I got a few of NOS ones, and I'll have to go through and I'll have to find them, then go through them and make sure I have the right one. You can see the threads on that one are missing, but if I have to, you know, I can always open this up and take the spring off and use it on a different carburetor if need be, a different cap if the spring is different, so I have the right spring in the carburetor. Then there's a little metal plate in here. There's a gasket that was around here. And this assembly is loose. I can feel it wiggling on the carburetor, but you got to take out this screw here for the piston that is the choke pull off. And these screws are all unique, so I know exactly where they go. That's why I'm just throwing them in there. It's hard to mess things up. That's a piston for the choke pull off. That's actually in pretty good shape, just a little dirty. We'll clean that up, and then I need to get a Phillips screwdriver to get those two screws out, and then this loose choke heater will come off, which was probably a vacuum leak, because the vacuum does run through a port here into this. It draws vacuum through a tube that goes through it goes completely through the exhaust manifold, the tube, and it sucks hot air through it up into here to heat the choke to open it up. And if that tube's rusted out in your exhaust manifold, it'll suck exhaust in, and it'll also be a little loud. You'll hear it'll sound like a leaky manifold or a cracked manifold. And the tube is bigger than the tube that attaches to here. This tube that attaches here goes into that tube that goes into the exhaust manifold. Alright, let me get a Phillips and we'll get these two screws out. And see, these screws are like a bevel. So you're not gonna, like I say, you're not gonna, screws are all unique, so you can tell exactly where they go. There's the other one. That's the vacuum port right there and right there. Hopefully I'm recording now. I just it just beeped and said memory card was full, so hopefully I didn't lose a lot of oh geez, that wasn't very good, was it? Open my dish. Did I lose any screws or anything? That's why I always use a dish, so I don't lose any important parts. It looks like everything stayed in there. All right, I'm going to get this PCV valve off, get that fuel thing out of there, and we'll separate the float bowl here from the main. Set that other one out, another one of those tubes. And I got to pull out the accelerator pump and check ball too. That's for the accelerator pump too. I think the kit comes with think it comes with new springs. I don't know, if it doesn't, I'll clean the old ones up, but I'm pretty sure there's the accelerator pump. I'm sure it does come with new springs. I got to get the power valves and the main valve, but I'm going to get this stuff off here, the PCV and this, before I get it too far apart and have difficulty holding it down and turning it. So let me get some tools here. Yeah, this is where they put the PCV valve on these old rides, is right here on the back of the carburetor, and then they went into a different, the hose went off here to a hose on a fitting that went into the back of the engine block where the road draft tube would go. And that sounds like it works. It's a little cruddy inside. I'll clean it out, you know, I mean, somebody, let's see, it says it's an AC. Let me get something and clean this off and we'll see what it states. All right, it states on it right below these arrows here. I don't know if you can see those arrows or not, but it has a 3082225, maybe 5. Maybe that's an S, I don't know, but it's 25. It looks like it's okay. The best I can tell, now that kind of looks like, I can't tell if that's a B or a 3, but it's 06. So the first one I think is a 3, 0. No, that's an 8. So it's 3082255. And it says AC C9255. So that's the PCV valve that came with this carburetor in the fitting. And I'll clean this up because, you know, this actually has a number on it too. Oh no, it doesn't. It just has some stampings there. I don't see any numbers on that, but I'm going to clean that up and save it too. And I always count how far the screws are open. Half. They're both open to half a turn. Doesn't look like they've been bottomed in the thing hard, which is good because that messes up the holes. Yeah, they're in good shape, the adjustment screws. And then there's a huge screw here, dead center. Wow, and that isn't even tight. Yeah, that was not, those are usually reefed down pretty good. And its lock washer. Yeah, you're not going to mistake that where to put it, so I can just throw it in the dish. And then there's the, wow. I bet you the reason why this carburetor was replaced was because it had huge vacuum leaks from all the loose. These are like a Phillips screw, and they're different from the other screws too. Phillips had different diameter, different lengths. So you're not going to get the screws in the wrong spot. That's something nice with these. Looks like this one has a vacuum port on the side here, right here. That's probably ported vacuum. Usually they port right off somewhere right down in where these throttle body, there's little holes you can see where they get their fuel. I don't know if they show up or not. They're kind of dirty, but anyway, that's where the fuel comes in. And I'd say the secondaries are stuck. Well, they'll work. They need cleaning up. No doubt about that. And another gasket, of course. I'll just set that aside over there. Yeah, that needs some cleaning, and it's a little sticky, so we'll get that cleaned up, and It's a little screw, little set screw here, and then there's a little screw there so you can turn the tension on that spring to adjust how much tension you have on these plates. And there is a spec for that in the shop manual, and you have this little thing you can pull. And I don't have that tool, but I just go by feel, and that actually feels pretty darn good. You know, I've done enough of them so I know what they should feel like when I push them. Alright, this one's 1 inch. You can clearly see on the wrench there. Oh wow. Loose again. Fuel filter has some crud on it. I have a whole ton of these fuel filters. You can clean them and reuse them. And the spring holds the filter against the gasket in there. So there's a gasket, and that just holds it. So if this filter gets plugged, completely blocked, it can bypass it by pushing in the spring. Then you get all your dirt and crud inside the carburetor. You know, so anyway, let me get the jets out. I'm going to need probably, well, no, I don't need a bigger screwdriver because they're loose too. Whoever rebuilt this carburetor didn't tighten anything up very good in it. These are the secondary mains. Yeah, these ones are just as loose. Let's see what these ones are. These are the primaries. All the gas the car burns, every drop of it, flows through these jets that I just showed you, or this power valve here. And I'm going to try this. Yeah, I don't want to round that power valve off. Well, it's loose too. Power valve is actually in nice shape and clean. Nothing wrong with the power valve. Alright, I got to get the accelerator pump thing out for the... Usually I use needle nose pliers. Let me get a pair and I'll pull that out. Usually these things pop out with a pair of needle nose pliers, but this isn't. There we go. That's part of the what holds the accelerator pump stuff in. The kit comes with all the stuff new, but the balls are often different sizes, and this ball is stuck down in there, so there it goes. So that's why I always set the ball aside, because the kit comes with 2 or 3 size balls, and you want to put the right size in, so I'll put that in my little plastic cup there. So this thing's totally ready for cleanup. It's really super nasty. Yeah, the accelerator pump wouldn't have worked. Sometimes I use Snowball toilet bowl cleaner in these float bowls, and they have corrosion on them like this. This obviously had a little bit of moisture in it at one time, but it's so minimal that I think it'll come out in the parts washer. That cleans up pretty easy. Yeah, that stuff will clean off fairly easy. Alright, so we got the top and the bottom ready for the parts washer now. We have everything. It looks like we have everything off this. I'm probably going to take this fitting out, so I'll put a pipe plug in here and a pipe plug in here, because most 6283s didn't use, you know, if you had power brakes or PCV, you use this, otherwise it was just blocked off because this hollow stud, I think, on this side, because this would be, this is the front of the carburetor, front of the engine. This would be the hollow stud for the vacuum, for the vacuum advance, and the automatic transmission modulator, if you have an automatic transmission, are off that hollow stud. And I like to run my vacuum advances on ported, or on manifold vacuum, so I think that's probably ported, so that's why we'll put a pipe plug in there too, which isn't uncommon to see that on carburetors where they're not used. Just cleaning up the mess here a little bit, I found the spring for the check ball. I thought maybe it was missing for the accelerator pump. But yeah, it's in rough shape, so fortunately the kits come with new springs for the accelerator pump check ball, so that'll just throw aside too. Yeah, this needs some serious cleaning. This thing must have coughed and hesitated and stalled and everything else under the sun, as loose as everything was in it. Yeah, that black stuff cleans out of there pretty easily. Just give it a quickie like this and I'll spray it with some Power Tune. Get that from Mercury Marine. It's made by Mercury. It's under their Quicksilver brand. And that stuff cleans stuff up so nice. And this is cleaning up pretty good. I think it'll look like a brand new carburetor when I'm done, hopefully. I get the heavy stuff off and then I spray it with the Power Tune. When I say the Power Tune, it's this stuff right here. I love that stuff. It works great. Guess my ladder is too much of an angle to set things on. It'll end up on the floor and probably break the top or something, knowing my luck. So I'm just going to go around and get the heavy stuff off like this. And then I'm going to spray the heck out of it with that Power Tune, let it sit overnight, and then I'll go over it again like this, and it usually cleans it up pretty darn good. I like rebuilding carburetors. I've done thousands of them. It's one thing at starters, generators, alternators, carburetors, this kind of stuff. I thoroughly enjoy rebuilding that kind of stuff, and carburetors are probably my favorite. A lot of people were ultra scared, if you remember the Ford variable Venturi in the early 80s before the throttle body fuel injection. It was a good carburetor if you kept them clean, but when you rebuilt them you had to use a dial indicator to set all the tolerances and settings on them, and if you set them up exactly as the shop manual stated for the engine that it was going on, if you had the proper shop manual with the factory specs, and you set everything up with a dial indicator, those carburetors were excellent. They produced good fuel economy, but yet you still had power when needed. I had an 81 Country Squire. That's one that I drove over 300,000 miles, and I rebuilt the carburetor once in that 300,000 miles. So it says something for it. Should go get the secondary vents and put them in here too. Throw these in here, and whoops, I dropped the screw. Well, I guess I'll be getting my magnet out. And sometimes the best way to soak these is actually just set them in the carburetor when the carburetor's full of cleaning stuff. You know, it's all down in those holes and stuff. That way it I'll come out of the rubber glove and put it back in. I don't like using this parts washer without the rubber gloves in. Oh, just cleaning that with the fluid made that work all much better. Alright, I'm going to spray everything down here shortly, and then turn the pump off. And then I'm going to, like I say, let it sit overnight. I think I might go get my magnet before I forget. I get frustrated, where is that screw? And I think I'm going to, I think it went down in the, oh no, it's right here. Screw and washer. That was for one of these. I'll do one side and then I'll let it sit a little while, and I'll do the other side. And You got to make sure mud daubers didn't build nests in these float vent tubes. There's a lot of this spraying the cleaning fluid too from doing this, so the solvent there works much better. There's another one of those screws. I must not have taken any of them out of one of the jets, so is there any more here? Yeah, there is. Oh no, that's part of the choke. Alright, so I think that was it. I think there was two missing over there when I walked over there. I like to make sure everything flows through everything. I think that accelerator pump's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get it. Oh no, it goes up in there. You can see when I squirted it, it's coming out. I might get the floats and set them and put them in there too, just for. This is the primary float. Good place to let them soak. Let me go get the other one, the secondary one. We'll just set that in there too as a good place to soak. Yeah, I ordered this stuff by the case when I ordered. Just get it online. You can go to a Mercury boat dealer, marine dealer that sells Mercury marine stuff. And OMC, well, OMC is no longer. It was bought by Volvo and they kind of sucked the company dry, so OMC is non-existent. The inside of this is extremely important to clean, especially if that exhaust tube was rotted out. That gives that heat. All right, I'm going to let that soak. That looks pretty good. Just move things here so that this will hit stuff in here if I don't arrange it such to where the tall stuff's out of the way of that. And then that's in case if it catches fire, that melts and it drops the lid. So it's a safety feature. And I don't want to forget these. I want to clean all those little bits and pieces too. So and let them soak and clean up. Alright, and this stuff, the longer you let it sit, the better it works. So it just kind of sticks to things and it'll eat all that stuff off. Everything will clean up like brand new on this carburetor, hopefully. That's really cruddy. I went and raided my parts stash and found one of the choke heaters that I have. I have a bunch of them. I can't even read the, just says one carburetor, stack cover, and coil assembly. And the last three numbers are 750. And it looks like there's a big 799 there, and that's there's maybe 700. I don't know, I can't tell. But this is the cover. And you can see the spring is totally different. The direction it coils is different. So I can always take this coil off and put it on this housing if I need to. Because that, I think, is the only difference really, is the spring itself. This might be a 6-cylinder or maybe a 2-barrel, 2GC or 1GC. I don't really know, but or maybe even another GM line, you know. But anyway, I'll before I take the spring off that and switch it with the spring on that one, I'm going to make sure I can find my other ones and see if I have one with the same spring that isn't broken on. And I'll save this. I'll save the spring, you know. I mean, it's always good to have those around. This one actually has a number on it too, and it says 0728. Kind of see a lot of the crud is cleaning off of it. I guess I'm getting in the light. I'll hold the camera the other way. But anyway, we'll let that soak a little longer. Well, I'm going to clean a little bit up here. I'm going to clean this top up first. I'm just going to work my way around in here. You can see all the crud that came off of everything. Good Lord, I got to clean my parts washer even after doing that. Look at that. Alright, let's see what this thing cleans up like. You can still see some crud down in here, but you know, it cleans out. Just work at it a little bit with the parts washer brush here, and may have to hit a couple spots. Again, it looks like I may have to take a little screwdriver and scrape some of the thick grease out of the really tight nooks and crannies down in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. I can just take a little screwdriver, but look at all the black that came off the choke. Look at that stuff, just brushes right off. And I'll clean that choke plates now compared to what it was when I started in the throat of the carburetor, which was black. It was completely black. Probably from backfiring from running too lean because it had a vacuum leak from the carburetor base being loose. I don't know if this shows up or not in there, but let me see if I can get this right in the light. But anyway, there's corrosion down in there. And I'm not going to bead blast that. I don't want to get beads stuck down in there. I usually use toilet bowl cleaner to clean that kind of stuff up. When I say toilet bowl cleaner, I mean toilet bowl cleaner. This is what I use. And look at how it cleaned that corrosion out of there. How nice and clean that is. That was maybe a minute, maybe two. Just took it in the kitchen sink and put some toilet bowl cleaner down in there and let it sit for, like I say, a minute or two, and then just washed it out with scalding hot water. And it's pretty much all, the body here is pretty much all clean. I went through and all the passages are clean. Everything flows, no corrosion in anything. Well, I was just cleaning up the main jets, and I don't know if that shows up or not, but the secondaries are 86 or 66, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can see that or not. They're both 66. See if I can, I don't know if the camera is going to focus on them or not, but they're both 66. And then the primary ones are both number 60. I don't know if that stamping shows up. The numbers are always on the main jets for the size of the jet. So we got 60 on the primary, 66 on the secondary. If you do a lot of carburetors, get yourself a little torch tip cleaning supply thing, because they work great for when you want to clean the jets out in a carburetor. So I had to sandblast this, or bead blast it. I used my glass bead. These edges had some corrosion, and there was some corrosion in the throttle body, so I just hit it very lightly with the bead blast cabinet. But there's idle circuit passage. I don't know if they show up in there or not, but anyway, you can put a wire, a little thing in them. Being careful not to hog them out any. You don't want to hog them out. And then you can see it in there, come through there. So I went through, I don't know if that's going to show up or not. I can't see what the camera's videoing, but anyway. Just make sure all those little holes are clean, and then there's bigger ones down in here, and then there's some on the secondaries here and here. Make sure they're all clean too. So everything, I got to wire through them all, and like I say, you want to be very careful you don't hog them out. And so anyway, this is lightly bead blasted. I cleaned it with gum out, ran my wire through it, cleaned it with gum out a second time. And now I'm going to paint the casting black, because that's the way these were originally. I got the external body all cleaned up. The best it's going to get. And I cleaned and painted this. Now I had to lightly bead blast this. I don't know if I'm repeating myself. This is the next day, so I don't remember what I videoed yesterday. But anyway, I got the innards to clean up, so I'm going to do that right now, and we'll start putting it together. There we go, all the bits and pieces cleaned up. The power valve, nice and clean. It's like brand new. Straighten the tag up. As you can see, I got everything laid out here. I painted the screws black because they're kind of crummy looking. That's kind of a low gloss black, and they're originally kind of a black plated color, I think. This was silver originally, so that's what I repainted it as. These were all kind of a gold color. I think this carburetor had been rebuilt in the past, and the rebuilder put their gold finish on it. And it had, most of the front of the carburetor was bare aluminum, most of the back carburetor was gold, and it kind of looked funny. So I just kind of stood back about, I held this at an arm's length out from the spray can, so that's one coat, very, very lightly from about 2 feet away. And I did the same with this because, again, this was all bare aluminum pretty much all around here, and it'll corrode. But anyway, I didn't even mask this. I just held it with my fingers like so and shot it from about 2 feet away to one very light coat. You can see it didn't even really get on. I just barely got the edges here. You can still see some aluminum there and there. So I just basically wanted to make it look a little more presentable and not have it half aluminum, half gold. Like I say, I believe this is a previous rebuilt carburetor, and I painted the adjustment screws white so they contrast, so you can see them to adjust them easy. I like to, that's the idle mixture, and I like to adjust those with the air cleaner in place, engine idling, and drive, and that way you get the smoothest idle. Because if you adjust it with the air cleaner off, and then you put the air cleaner on, often that richens it up just enough to where sometimes it'll run slightly rough. I'm going to start putting this thing together. I'm going to put the power valve in. I need to dig the gasket out. I think I'm just kind of rearranged my bench here a little bit to make more room, but I think I'm going to set all the gaskets out so I can get the little ones that I need. Put the power valve in. I put the little gasket on it. If I can carefully reach down in here and do this. A pair of tweezers sometimes helps to put these things together. Did I show putting the main jets in? I put the main jets in. There's the power valve installed. That's where that little screen goes in right there. So I'm going to put that in next, just so it's in there. Let me move some of these gaskets out of the way so I don't lose them. And then I sometimes use a little socket to push that clip in, but these can be a nightmare to get the screen in place. Again, tweezers works good with these. There we go, the screen's in place. Probably have, like I say, go get it. In fact, I'm just going to get a little socket right now, save me some aggravation. If you don't have tweezers in your toolbox, you should get some and put in it, because they're kind of handy to have to do little things like this. And then I got a 1/4-inch socket that doesn't fit down in there, so I'll have to get a different one. Hang on. All you need to do is get a socket, you know, that has a small enough collar. There's 3 little things, and you just, there, that is installed. That's how easy it is. You just set that clip in place with the spring. Hopefully that shows up in there. And then push that screen in with the socket. Then the check ball, I think I'll put the accelerator pump in this assembly in first, or next I should say. So the check ball was this one right here, and that was pretty corroded down in there originally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the old check ball in there. I'm going to get a little punch and just lightly tap it with the hammer to redo the face of the seat. Use the old one because you'll dent it doing it with the punch most likely, and then it won't seal properly. So that's why I always save the old one for size. As you can see, there's 3 different check balls in there, and they're 3 different sizes: really small, a little bigger, and a big one. And you don't want to put the wrong one in there because it won't work. So make sure you save your old check ball until you're ready to put the carburetor together, so you know which one it was. And if it was corroded like this one, punch in a little light tap, like with a pair. You don't even have to use a hammer. Very light tap. Just get yourself a punch like so. That's generally enough. And then I'll look down in there. Let me get my little flashlight. I want to look down in there and make sure the seat looks good after doing that still. I doubt that's going to show up down in there, but if it does, more power to everyone, me and the camera. But that seat looks pretty good. So we'll find the check ball that size right there and put the new check ball, the little spring, and the little thing that holds it in, and then I can put this is the secondaries, because it does not have an accelerator pump. This is the primaries, because that's where it squirts out there, and there's, along with squirting out right there and right there, there's a little air bleed right there and a little air bleed right there to prevent those from siphoning if the float level's up. And that's an air bleed too. And these are air bleeds. Those are important to make sure they're clean. This jet for the accelerator pump was completely blocked. I'd run a little wire through it, and both the vents were blocked. I ran a little tiny wee wire through them. And then when I'd spray gum out in that hole, it would squirt out there, there, and there with my finger over this hole. Otherwise it just shoots straight through. So let me get the check ball, the right one, and all the parts, and we'll get the accelerator pump in next. I just dumped all this stuff out. This is the original check ball because I can see the corrosion on it. I don't know if you can or not, but I can clearly. It's got a flat spot on it now from tapping it. See how it, but this is definitely the size check ball it has, so we'll drop that down in there. And then we got the little spring and this T thing that go in next. And those are usually peened over in. When they're assembled, that's why you got to yank them out with a pair of needle nose pliers. And sometimes they can be a little bit of a nightmare to get back in, but we'll get it in. Let me get a little, maybe I can, where'd my punch go? Probably need a bigger punch, but we'll try this one. There's a groove that it fits in. Gotta make sure it's in that groove. Need to get a better tool to drive that in. Hang on a second. There we be. Pretty simple. Kind of see where it is now, right here. The next thing I'm going to do is put this in, so let me find the old gasket. The one that was torn was the old one. This will give me an idea what to start with. That one looks pretty good. I think all these are the same. I don't know why they give you 4. That one looks pretty good. Yeah, they're all the same gasket. Alright, so they just give you 4. I guess I'm not going to complain about that. And I hold them over here to make sure it's not covering anything up. And then you want to put these tubes in right here. So let me get what I need here, the fasteners and everything. Hang on. So I just cleaned up some of the stuff around here. So put these tubes down in. I kind of like to turn them so that the fuel can flow into them, like so. Now apparently this must have, let me find the screws here. This must have some space in here around here. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I guess it comes up around it. So this does, often the center screw is a special screw because the fuel travels up through the whole screw goes through, but it looks like this one, it comes up. I don't know. That it may have the wrong screw in there. If the accelerator pump doesn't work, I'll take this screw out and change it so that usually it's not threaded all the way. It's just threaded. One of the screws is always different. All these are the same. That's the problem when you get rebuilt carburetors from a rebuilder, is they take all the carburetors, throw them in their cleaning tank, and you don't know. You could get this part from one carburetor, that from another carburetor, this from another one, that one from another one. You know, I mean, they just figure all 4 GCs are the same, so they just all throw it all together, and then they put them together, and like, you know, so they just grab all the screws, and whether the screw is the correct one or not, who knows. But anyway, these screws were the ones that I took out. So we'll put them back in, then we'll put some fuel in there and try the accelerator pump before I put the top on it, because I have these screws somewhere, and I always save all my old, if there's any leftover parts, if these are left over, or like the check balls or any clips or anything like that that's left over, I always save them. and parts carburetors. And you know, these people that say a carburetor is junk, they're going to take it off and put an Eldebrock or something on because the carburetor that's on the engine is junk. Well, they just don't know anything about carburetors. That's why they're doing that. They don't know how to rebuild them or, you know, service them. But all carburetors are pretty cut and dry and pretty simple. And really the only time that they're not salvageable is if the casting is warped, cracked, or the bowls are corroded through. Yeah, working in the boat business, I've seen the bottom of float bowls corroded right through. And so you got to make sure that everything is correct, you know, and carburetor will function good. Carburetors are super simple. If you can take an engine apart or a transmission apart, there's no reason you can't take a carburetor apart. You know, it's one thing, I don't know, maybe I'm just, so I've rebuilt so many of them. Boats use carburetors right up into the 21st century, so that's why I guess I've rebuilt lots of them. Boats, they tend to get water and stuff. You get a boat that has sank and you got to take the carburetor off and dump the water out so you can get, you know, the first thing you want to do on a boat that is sunk is you want to get the water out of everything, get the thing going. And usually the outdrives, the gear lube doesn't get water in them because they're completely sealed other than the U-joint end. But if you don't get a lot of water in the bellows, you don't get water in the gear lube. The trim pumps get water in them, and the engine oil and the fuel system. So you want to get the engine running ASAP when you get a boat brought in that has sunk. This didn't have those tubes like the primary had in the secondary, so I'll just throw this in. And it sounds like somebody's here, so I'm going to have to go take a peep. This may continue here shortly in a little bit. Alright, back to work here. I guess I don't need to video all this, putting these screws in and stuff. I like to make sure things are snugged up, and I re-snug everything after I'm done before I put the top on, because those gaskets tend to smush down. Now all these gaskets were the same on both Venturis. You can see this one has a little extra gasket because that would fit the accelerator pump there. So those can go in my spare parts drawer. Got the new gasket for it. Get it in place here. I believe this is so when the engine coughs back, if it backfires, it opens and fires out that instead of pushing the Venturi things open. I gotta find a little screwdriver here. Don't get carried away with tightening these, you'll strip the threads, but they do need to be, whoops, what did I do with the screwdriver? They do need to be snug. This thing was super loose when I took it apart. Yeah, these are just little screws, so that's all you use is a little screwdriver. I don't think this one will fit the... Yeah, it does fit the screw head. Nice and tight. Kind of see what I'm doing here. I think I might put the throttle body on next, which means this has to go on, and these are really nice and freed up and work really well. Vacuum opens these, so when you step on the accelerator, the velocity of the air starts opening these, and these are, you know, they help with the airflow and whatnot. So I'll throw that in. Let's see, are these two gaskets the same? No, they're different. So See the differences over here. The location of some of the punched holes. It's going to turn it around. Nope, they're the same. There's one hole difference. See how that one has a hole there and this one doesn't? You got to make sure you use the right gaskets. So what I'll do is I'll look at the throttle body and make sure the gasket I use lines up with all the holes. See how that one has that? If I use this gasket, that hole is blocked off, and that goes to this ported vacuum that this fitting was in. Screwed in right here. I'll just screw it in just so you can, well, anyway, I want that to have vacuum, so if somebody needs to use that, they don't have the wrong gasket and not have vacuum. So anyway, that pretty much all covers all the holes. These two, this one, these three. These are the screw holes, so both gaskets are going to have all that. So there we go. That gasket goes on there. And then I need the screws, which were these Phillips ones. Blow the cardboard dust off of them from getting the quick paint. And if I forget something, I can always go back and take whatever apart and redo it. I mean, we've all done that, right? I've left those secondary flappers out before and put the carburetor on the engine and wondered why it wouldn't run right. And the reason why I forgot it was because it was still in the parts washer of the carburetor I was overhauling. It was just a complete oversight. We all do it. Been there and done that, right? I want to snug these up good and tight. These ones were loose originally, and that's why I think this carburetor was probably removed from service. Or maybe the engine or the car was just completely worn out. Let me get my ratcheting screwdriver and tighten those up. Handy little tool to have, one of these ratcheting screwdrivers. You want to snug them up, but again, you're threading into aluminum, so don't over tighten them and strip them, but you don't want them loose by any means, otherwise you'll end up with a hesitation. I remember working in the Ford dealers, and we'd get Granadas and Fairmonts and anything with one of those inline sixes with a single barrel, and they would hesitate, and Ford recalled them and replaced the carburetor. And why they replaced it, I don't know. It was basically all the problem was the base would come loose from this part, main body, and that would cause the hesitation. I could take the carburetor off of one and just tighten these screws and it would run perfect, but Ford replaced the carburetor, so you know, I guess that was all fine. Might put this on, just get it out of the way. Just kind of put some things together here. Find the gasket for that. Put the piston in it. Piston just drops down into the bore. That's your choke pull off. And then the shaft for it should be around here somewhere, right here. And then the screw for it. It's pretty hard to mess up what screws go where on these 4GCs. They're a pretty good carburetor, pretty easy. The 2GC and 4GC are ultra easy to, all carburetors in my mind are easy to rebuild. The ones that can be a, you know, you know, when you talk about all this carburetor is junk, some of the thermal quads, you know, they have that plastic. This section is plastic on the thermal quad, and they tend to want to make sure that's good and tight. Oops, what did I do? I pushed it too far and the piston came out of the bore. There we go. So if you do a thermal quad, you got to really look at the plastic body to make sure it's not warped or cracked. I'll do the floats near last because that way if I bump them while I'm working on it, I don't damage it. I'm going to put this on. This is the bowl vent. Little screw for it. And this thing's kind of cruddy. I think I might throw that in some toilet bowl cleaner and see if I can clean it up a bit. Alright, I'm going to put a little toilet bowl cleaner on this bracket, see if that cleans it up. I'll just put some in this cup enough to... So I have a couple pieces of linkage I want to clean up. You can see it foaming in there and it doesn't take long. It's an acid, so it cleans the crud off, the rust and whatnot. Toilet bowl cleaner is. We'll rinse it off with some water and we'll see how it looks. Anyway, I realized I left the radio on, so I don't know, I might have to leave a clip out where I left the radio on. But anyway, we got that cleaned up with some toilet bowl cleaner. So I'll probably have to edit that bit out. That this was in it. Oh, and I also, the part I edited out, I forgot to put that big screw in, so I put that in. But anyway, yeah, sorry about that. I just forget to turn the radio off sometimes, and then because of copyright, YouTube's anal about that I can't use that video. So anyway, I was going to put this on 45 minutes ago, and I'm going to do it now. Alright, I'm going to take this little screw here because it needs cleaning up, and I'm just going to dip it in the toilet bowl cleaner. It looks like I'm going to have to change my paper towels. I got some toilet bowl cleaner on them, and I don't want that on my bench and stuff. So like I say, it's an acid. It'll corrode it. When I'm done here, I'll just go pour this cap in the toilet. See how that cleans all the rust and corrosion off of it? Toilet bowl cleaner is excellent for cleaning rust up. Use it on electrical connections and sockets, and use it on a lot of things. Stuff that in there, you'll see it foaming. Let me make sure my battery's still going. Yeah, I gotta change my battery here. I hadn't changed it yet. You can see it foaming in there. This part of it's pretty good, so I probably won't soak that part, and that's probably enough. Let me go rinse it off the water and change my battery. So you can see that cleaned up pretty nice, and if you don't want them to rust again, just take some oil and just put it on a rag and wipe, kind of, you don't want it all drippy oily, but you know, just wipe it on. I'll show you the, I don't know if you can see that or not, but one's much thicker than the other, so we're going to use the thinner one, and if we need to, the float levels are way off, we'll change it out to the thicker ones. And I'll get this in. I don't want to strip the threads. Usually I just start them with your finger, and then you won't strip them, because that will ruin the carburetor top if you strip it. Oops. Screwdriver slipping in the thing there. Alright, they're tight. You just don't want to get... I have a tool somewhere, actual tool to do those. And then you want to put your gasket on. You always set your float level with the gasket in place. And then we can get our floats. Let's see, this is the secondary side I'm working on. This is the secondary float. And as you remember, there was little springs on these, and these go into a little hole. So put this hook part, I don't know if you can see, this is so fine, and anyway, like that. It goes through that hole because this will bend down and rest against the back side of that. So let me get a float pin here and a needle. Let's see, and I got to put the little doohickey on for that. And this comes with 2 different sizes of these. And I'm going to use this one to start out with. It just, so you know, you just want everything to go together right. So if it doesn't, switch to the other one. Then see, there's a little notch there that goes in. Put your spring back in, which fell out. Now the springs kind of a nightmare. I'll use my tweezers once I get it down there to make sure that thing's where it belongs. Might be able to just push it. Let's see here. There we go. Secondary floats in. I'm going to put the primary float in next because you want your floats kind of straight from one another, and you don't want them twisted. They both got, you measure off both of them so you get your float level right. All right, I'm going to turn this around because it's easier for me. Might not view as well, but I find it easier. I guess I should put that, I'll put that in after I get the accelerator pump. Let's see here, these are not being used. Oops, wrong side. You always put these tabs down, you know, that's what hits for the float drop. You have a float level and a float drop. 2 adjustments on the floats. The float drop is, I think, essentially just so the float doesn't rest on the bottom of the float bowl. Let me get my spring here. Whoops, I'm knocking things silly. Oops, I missed the spring. There we go. Well, maybe I'll push this in from the other way. Sometimes these float pins only like to go in from one side, I find. They go in easy one way and going hard the other. And well, it's not going in at all. Let me see why here. Must have some burrs on this because it's only, yeah, let me just lightly sand this. It has a few little burrs on it. When I say lightly sand it, I mean lightly. You don't want it loose in there, but you want it to go through. See how it's catching right there. I'm turning it as I move it back and forth. Sometimes you can wipe them off. Yeah, you can see where the burr is right there. When you sand them lightly, you can totally see things like that. And then I'll just sand that. There we go. See, it doesn't take much. You just want these things to fit right. Put my spring back on. Tweezers, am I recording even? Yep. I don't want to do all this and have to take it apart and do it again to show you how I do it. Go. Both floats are installed. They look pretty good like that. All right, let me get the specs for the float level and float drop on. I'm going to put this together. I'm going to give this a quick. There's a little bit of crud on that, and I don't want it in the fuel, so I'm going to give it a super light bead blast. I think this is stainless steel, maybe, but it has crud on it from, you know, old fuel and stuff. So, and toilet bowl cleaner isn't going to take old fuel off. That's only good for corrosion. So let me run this ultra quick through the blast cabinet. There it is, cleaned up. Just goes on here. Push that down so you can put this little clip. There, like so, and that will go down in there with this spring here. That goes down in there like so. And I'm going to put some fuel in here and make sure that thing squirts fuel before I put it together. Put something in there, water or something. I just want to make, you know, I can blow it out with compressed air. I want to make sure with that screw that squirt. So I'm using the adjustment table from the kit, and you know I got to get a magnifying glass to see it. But with the springs, I'm looking at the Chevrolet only, and it shows all 283, 327, and 61 348 engines to be 1 and 1730 seconds, I believe. Yeah, 1 and 1730 seconds. So I got my ruler out here and it has 30 seconds on it. So that would be 1 and 1730 seconds right there. Yeah, that one's deep. They're both a little deep. And that one's pretty much all pretty good. That one's deep. So this one, you know, it's kind of jacked out of shape. So first I'll get them so they're even, and then I can just bend it right here to shallow the float up. Sometimes it's easier to just take the float off than to, you know, to bend it and then put it back on. And it's a bit of work, but generally you get a better job doing that. And on these round floats, you do it on the top of the float. On the flat ones, sometimes you do it on the toe. Sometimes there's a mark on some of the floats. So it depends on, that one's still pretty high. Yeah, they both got to come down. Now I think I got them about, let me make sure this is right. I think I got them about level, you know, even across. But they're both slightly deep. I think it needs to be a little bit more of a tweak there. You don't want one float deeper than the other on the same arm, that's for sure. And they're both a little high. So I guess I don't need the thicker gasket because that would push these up this way more. So I might just take this pin out and bend the whole float arm. Just be easier than, you know, I don't want to damage the needle. So yeah, this is about the most fiddly part of rebuilding a carburetor, is setting the float level. Now you can see why I took that pin and made it so it would fit in and out, because sometimes you take the float in and out a half a dozen times before you get it. I mean, you can get them close, but I like to get them exactly right. That's just the way I am. I mean, I don't think a 32nd of an inch is going to make a hill of beans difference. Whoops, I need my tweezers to let that spring. Whoops. Need about 6 hands to do this. And I'll probably adjust the other float. I won't video that because, you know, it just, I think you get bored. You get the picture from one. They're both going to be exactly the same. As far as how to adjust them. Oops, got to get it through that spring. There we go. Oh wow, that's almost pretty much all spot on. That side's a little deep. Still a little deep on that side. That side's right on the money, but this other side is definitely too deep. Wow, I really bent that one down. Still too deep. That one's perfect. That one's like right on the money. Hope I didn't bend it too much. I saw I bent it quite a bit. Yeah, I just bent it slightly too much. And it's still a little bit too much. Got to keep my measure right on the 17 there. Yeah, see, now I got that one too deep. That one's still spot on. Doesn't take much to bend these things, so just be careful with them. A little bit at a time. Almost. Now that one's too shallow. Or too deep, I should say. When they clear the ruler, they're too deep, and when they don't clear the ruler, they're too shallow. Because that's shutting the fuel off and that's turning the fuel on. And that's pretty darn good right there. And that's pretty darn good right there. All right, I'm happy with that. And then the float drop is this, which generally you hold the carburetor the other way. I'll just hold it up just to kind of show you. Let me get the spec. And then there's a little tab there right here on the, I don't know if I can show it to you or not, but there's a tab right there you bend for that, see how it hits the fill thing? That's how you adjust the float drop, by bending that. That's one thing with carburetors, you bend things to adjust them. You bend linkages, you bend floats. That's how you get things set right. All right, let me get the specs, hang on. All right, the float drop for the primary and the secondary are both 2 1/4. We'll set the secondary float level after I'm done here, but it says to turn the carburetor this way, and that should be 2 1/4 inches. It's a little less than 2 1/4 inches. That one's right on 2 1/4. I don't know why this one isn't. Actually, it is. Okay, they're both. I just had my ruler in the wrong spot. Okay, so the float drop is correct on the primary. Might as well do this. Check the secondary. Yeah, that's dropping too far, so we'll adjust that when we adjust. We'll adjust the float depth first. So the float depth is different on the secondary, so let me get my specs out and we'll set them. The secondaries are 1 19/32. Now I am adjusting this to 59 to 64, 283, 327 specifications, so that's all too high. I don't want to. You don't want to push on your needle to bend this, so support your thing or take it off. Just don't want to jam your needle valve down in. Ooh, that's pretty close. A little bit more down. Equally on both sides. I think I'm going to hold this from this side because it doesn't have the tab for that spring. If you have the spring, you have different float specs than if you don't have the spring. So keep that in mind. And a little bit uneven too. The gasket's kind of wampus there, so I gotta kind of hold it. That's getting pretty close. This one's got to go down more. This one was pretty good. It's still got to go down more. Yeah, they both need to go down more. All right, I'm not going to video. You get the picture of how I set them, so I'm going to get this one set, and then we'll start assembling the rest of the carburetor. Now it's adjusted correctly, so I'll just show you. That's 19, spot on, spot on. The gas gets a little pushed up there, so I got to push down on it. Spot on, and I rechecked those and the float drop, and they're all spot on. So we got the floats adjusted, so I guess next step I'll put the accelerator pump in. We'll start getting the top ready to bolt onto the carburetor. So there's a check ball that goes down in here too on this particular carburetor, and I put it in, and you can see I don't want to get gas everywhere, but that is definitely pumping. So okay, so accelerator pump works. Let me get the gas out of this thing. I got to make sure I don't lose that little check ball. I drained my toilet bowl cleaner out of here and cleaned that out and put a little, that's ethanol free gas that I poured in the float bowl just to check it, but I'm going to clean that out and blow it out with compressed air so it doesn't have any gas in it. So I guess we're ready to put the top of the carburetor on. For that, we'll be taking it back off. And I got to put this little rubber thing on here for the accelerator pump. I think I might just start just a couple screws just to hold the carburetor in place while I put things kind of where they belong. Accelerator pumps on. There should be a little C-clip. Let me find the little clip for that to hold that. Let me hunt that up. There's a little clip that goes on here, a little E-clip. I didn't bore you with putting all the screws in, but the top is fastened on. Let me start putting this linkage on. This is the accelerator pump. This goes in this hole here, and then it either goes in that one or that one, so I'll have to again look in the shop manual and see which hole it goes in. Throttle's kind of open, so it makes it hard to, maybe I'll set this on the intake manifold and set it here, and then I can open and close the throttle and stuff. Makes setting it up a lot easier, and I'll put the camera on a tripod for you guys. Now it should be a little easier to fool with because I got to be able to work the throttle, and you know, so I can adjust the accelerator pump. I'm going to do the accelerator pump first because it's easiest. Then I'm going to do the choke because you need to do the choke so you can bend this. You got to bend these linkages. This is the accelerator pump, this is the fast idle cam, and this is the choke, and you got to bend them. So I'll bend this, get this adjusted right with the choke over there. I'll flip it around and show you how I do that. That will be after I do the accelerator pump. So now I highlighted the specifications, and I'm using the 59, let's see here, it says 59 to 64 with float tension spring, 283 327 engine, 1959 to 61 348 engine. So I don't know if I can video if this will show up or not, to where you can read it and pause it, and it gives you what it's for up here. But anyway, the next thing I want to adjust is the float or accelerator pump. So this goes in here. This was in the second hole originally. On the specs, or the forwardmost hole. And the specs, it says float, let's see here, pump rod, and it's just a blank. It says pump rod location. You can see some say, well, I don't know if you can see this or not, some say outer, some say center, one says ST inner, but the one here shows nothing, it's just a dash. And then it shows the pump rod at 1 1/16 inch. So what it means by that is you get your measuring thing and you set it to 1 1/16 of an inch, and the bottom of that rod, when this thing's at curb idle, which is there, should be 1 1/16, and that's actually spot on. It's right on 1 1/16. So I can put the clips on this to hold this rod on, which I'm going to do now, and then we'll adjust this. So the next thing I'm going to set is this bowl vent, and according to the specs here, let me see if I can find it. Intermediate, oh, let's see here, idle vent, 31/30 seconds. Again, I don't know if that shows up in there or not, but anyway, let me check that. 31/30 seconds. And again, to the bottom of the push rod, right when that vent closes, that should be at, yeah, see, the vent's not closed until the vent is closed there, so I need to bend that tab down so that that vent opens at the right time. Hopefully my arm isn't in the way. Holding these things, keeping these things, this rule in the right exact spot is sometimes a bit of a challenge. Almost, it's like maybe another 30-second will do the job. Doesn't take much. I mean, you don't even seem like you're bending it, and you're bending it. So let me get this back at, and if you want your carburetor to function properly, you gotta, all right, the vent is closed right there, and I'd say that's right on the money. All right, so that's the idle vent, or the bowl vent, which is set to specifications. So now we gotta set the automatic choke. I'm just going to put this linkage on just because I'm sick of it being in my way. I might have to take the fast idle cam off to get that linkage through there. Well, we'll just leave this off for now. That's no big deal. Oh, and I also went and got I have a whole ton of these. So you remember when I took it apart, the original filter was kind of corroded looking, so I'll put a new filter in. Let me get my razor knife and I'll cut that open and we'll get that in and out of the way. So the filter goes in, you got a gasket here, a gasket inside there. The filter goes that way in, you got a spring, and I'm going to put a drop of oil on the, oops, crap, I dropped my spring. All right, I got to pick that up, and I'm going to put a drop of oil on the threads so it's not threading in that bare. I put a drop of oil on every screw on the carburetor too, just so it doesn't corrode. Oh, and while I was looking for that filter, yeah, I knew I had these and I just didn't know where they were, but this is what it is. So it's the master set for '59 Chevy of adjusting all the settings on your 4GC. So like right here, vent, float vent. So you set the tool on there, and then actually I think you set it there. I don't know, but anyway, I'll have to go back and review. So that's the pump, that's the vent. Actually, I think you set it like this, and I don't know. It's kind of, I don't use it a lot because it's kind of, that gets in the way. But these are all different gauges, 2 1/4. That one's 0.235, 0.015. These are like thickness feeler gauges. That's 0.43. A lot of these are for like setting chokes, and these are your float gauges. So this one's 1 43/64 and 1 47/64. But anyway, that's 59 Chevrolet 348, and I'm setting this up to 58 to 64 283. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you those. All right, let me get a drop of oil on those threads. You can clean those filters, you don't have to. And that's what's nice about those old brass filters. You can actually physically clean them. And don't over tighten that. You'll strip your threads, but tighten it up good, because otherwise it'll leak. And there's some lead things on here I'll show you that you can tap in if they leak too. All right, let me flip the stuff around. This adjustment's pretty cut and dry, but it's important so you get the proper amount of choke pull off once the engine starts. So close the choke, push the piston, and see how that piston comes out. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you remember the piston I had out of here. That piston needs to be flush with the end of the bore like that while the choke's closed. So I don't need to bend that a linkage. That linkage is correct. So let me put a clip on it. We'll go back to the other side. Yeah, rush putting the fast idle cam on. You need to have it off to put the linkage on. See how there's 2 little tabs on that? That goes towards the choke end. That goes towards the throttle linkage end. So it just kind of... like so. And I'm not going to tighten this up because I may be taking it off to bend linkage. Alright, the choke is open, and the secondaries, as you can see, will open there. So that's good. That's a step forward in the right direction. So now we'll close the choke, and that should be on the highest step, which it is. Now let me see what the spec is for how far this choke opens, and then that should drop to the second step. But I think everything will be good with it. I don't think I'll need to do any other adjustments. That looks pretty good, so I might be able to snug this up a bit. And let's see what the spec is for that. Let's get the magnifying glass out. Let me take a look. The choke rod is supposed to be so when the choke, and I'm reaching in the choke cap where the spring would be. I'm not like doing it here. So that way you take up for the slop and the linkage and whatnot. But it's 1/16 of an inch at the top that it needs to be open when this is on the second step of the fast idle, which that's the second step right there. And I'm just going to use my gauge here. And hopefully, I don't know if I can contort myself around where you can see this or not, but it just starts to go, so I'm not going to horse with it. I mean, I could bend that just a straighten it up just a tad. Straighten this up so this cam drops down a little extra. But I think that the cam is worn, so if I move it to where it looks like it's on the true second step as opposed to right against the first step, it's actually a little loose. Like it's about the same looseness as it is tight if I pull it right up to the, actually that's right on the money. I just pulled it right up to the edge of the second step. And I can fit that through in there. So we're gonna call that's close enough. You don't, you know, they load up if they're too lean and they hesitate and stall if they're, or I mean hesitate and stall if they're too lean, and they load up if they're too rich. Okay, so the next thing is if you flood the car and you have to push the accelerator to the floor to start the car. See how I'm holding the choke. So that has a spec too. The next thing I'm going to adjust is a choke unloader. So when you flood the engine, you pump the, you know, some of these people, they pump their carburetor thinking they need to pump it 5,000 times, start the engine. If there's gas in the bowl, one pump is all it should need, and it should start the car right up. If the choke is functioning, the accelerator pump is functioning, and the carburetor is full of gas and fairly clean, you shouldn't have to pump it a million times. One pump, and it should light right off. And if you flood it, you push the accelerator to the floor, and I don't know, can you see the choke open? Hang on, let me raise the camera up so you can see the choke valve. I think that shows up now, so I put the choke spring on, the broken one, just to make this adjustment easier. But see how when you put it to wide open throttle, it opens the choke up? That's supposed to be 15/64ths. Not 15/16ths or 15/32, but 15/64ths. Between the air horn and the choke butterfly. And it's just a little bit more than what it should be, so I'll bend this tab down slightly. Again, these things don't take much to make a big difference. And that's pretty darn close right there. I don't think you're going to get it much. It's hard to do with this thing here, but just holding this thing, and even with the end of the air horn here and eyeing it to the choke plate, that is, I would say, spot on, so I'm not going to change that anymore. The next adjustment, the choke has to be down like this, and that's for the secondary, and I think that's supposed to be a 16th. I remember doing these recently on the Bel Air. Yeah, the lockout 1/64th. So that is almost nothing. Wow. Yeah, I don't even know if that's 1/64th. Let me put the camera back down so you can see what I'm doing. I bent this to adjust the, you know, the choke unloader. But 1/64th. Let me take that choke cap back off so the choke stay. Well, I might need it closed again because you got a couple things you got to measure with it. But anyway, we'll just hold that open. And I'm measuring from this bottom to this top, if that makes any sense. I can hold that open while that's at 2/64ths. There. I'd say that's spot on. So when the choke is open, the secondaries work. I'll show you. Let me take you off the tripod. This camera doesn't have the shaky feature, okay, but when you set the choke, see how this goes in there? You can put it right to wide open throttle and even unload the choke, and the secondaries don't open. The only way those secondaries open is when the choke is full off And see that gap there? That has to be 1/64th of an inch when it's adjusted correctly. So there's another adjustment, let me do that. All right, the next one is a secondary lockout, which is, so you bend that thing up and down for the clearance here, and you bend it 4 1/2 for the clearance here. And again, that's 1/64th of an inch. And I'd say that's right on the money, and I'll show you what I mean there. Let me take the camera off the stand again. That's the space between, sorry, this doesn't have steady cam in it like my little thing fell off, but you can see, I don't know if that shows up or not, probably not, but that is exactly 1/64th. It's just barely clearing it, and that way you're not opening your secondaries when you see what little it opens. You don't want that to open a whole bunch when it's locked out. So just give you the heads up on that. So everything should be set up on this carburetor now. I don't think there's anything more adjustments on it. I think that is all the adjustments. So let me get the choke cap correct. Well, let's get this thing wrapped up. So next you put in this. Got a flat and a flat. Put on the gasket. Actually, I want to clean these little doohickeys up here, so I'm going to do that next, and then we'll put the cap on. I'm just going to throw them in my paint cap with a little toilet bowl cleaner, and it should clean. These are what hold the little, can't see what I'm talking about, can you? Anyway, those need to be cleaned up. They're too small to bead blast, and that's about all the toilet bowl cleaner I need to put in there. Look at them foaming in there. Doesn't take very long. I'll slash this. I keep a bucket of water in the garage, and I'll slash that out. But again, second time I've shown this. Truly is toilet bowl cleaner I'm using. How do you like that? Less than a minute. Those things are brown with rust. Then it just cleans them up nicely. Neutralize it with water. If it's like a metal, it's going to rust right away. Wipe a little film of oil on it. Anyway, that's pretty much all it. I'll put the choke so the spring goes. I hunted around in my junk hoard of parts, carb parts, and I found a good cap with what I think is the right spring, but it seems to rotate the right way, so you put it up there, turn it, and I'm going to set it until it's just closed right there. I can adjust that after I start the screws, but I do it at room temperature just to close the choke, and generally that's where you want it. And you can play with this, you know, like back in the day, you would adjust your choke differently for different times of the year. Like in the summertime, the Bel Air, I have to set it a notch or two richer, and in the wintertime, because otherwise the choke just doesn't set. And then in the wintertime, I set it a notch or two leaner if I drive it in colder weather. But this, notice how it has an elongated hole? That's so you can just loosen them up, so you can move it that much without taking this off. So that is generally enough for, that movement is generally enough for your winter to summer use. And like I say, I like to, I don't know if you can see the choke here or not. I got something sitting under the manifold, but see how it just shuts tight right there. And I'm going to set this kind of in the, let's see, do I have that? It makes a difference which way these go on. Yeah, that's the right way, because they're kind of bowed. So these are closer to this than the screw. That way it holds the cap. So let's see, we can put it, let's see, that's about the leanest of the travel there. That, put it there. That way it can be leaned out if it needs to be, or if it needs to be richened up more, it can be just taken right off. And you can set the choke, and a notch or two, believe me, makes all the difference in the world. There, now see how that turns? See how the choke moves there? That's often enough for the difference between your summer and winter. That's where I would set it for summer operation. And then you'd pull it back for winter operation. That's just the way it was back in the day, you know. You just change things for the seasons. Most cars still, you know, this era, they had points condenser. They ran leaded gasoline, which carboned up spark plugs, and you know that's where a lot of the carbon came from. Unless it was consuming oil, a lot of the carbon came from the lead. And you know, so you'd have to have annual tune-ups or biannual tune-ups depending on how much you drove your car, which consisted of points, condenser, spark plugs, fuel filter, whatever, you know. But anyway, there we go. That is set, and I like the way the choke is set. And that can always be, you know, leaned out a notch or two just by simply loosening these 3 screws and turning it without taking this one all the way out. If you want to turn it more, just back this out enough to where that clears those little teeth. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Those are the little teeth, and you can see how it's up and will allow it to move. And then when you hit the throttle, choke sets. If you push it wide open, it opens it back up a bit. Let it up, closes. Everything's adjusted to factory specs on this carburetor now. So there we go, a completely rebuilt, ready to go 1960 intake manifold that's for a 283. It will work on any other year 283s. It'll work on 327s also. And this is all set up for 59 to 64 283s and 327s, and 59 to 61 348, which the 348 was changed to a 409 in mid 61, so that's probably why that spec. But basically anything from 59 to 64, this manifold and carburetor will work on a small block Chevy, or even, you know, I had a friend that had a 66 Impala convertible, SS convertible, that had a square bore, had this same kind of setup on it. So it'll work on a lot of other things. But anyway, we're pretty much all done with this manifold and carburetor. And I'm going to sell a pair. And I'll put the price in the description of what I want for it. And if somebody's interested in it, they will have to pick it up, because I'm not going to build a box to put it in. These nuts are just on here finger tight, so the gasket doesn't get ruined, you know, so because you're going to have to take the carburetor off to get the bolts to get a torque wrench on there and everything. But anyway, it looks like it cleaned up nice. A little bit of dust on the manifold will get off there. The oil cap, I don't have an oil cap. I looked online, and oil caps are about $50, so you'll have to reuse your 2-barrel oil cap, which will fit right on. The rubber grommet here, I accidentally put in this with the stuff in the parts washer, and it swelled up to about twice its actual size. I could put it in floor dry and probably get it to go in there again, but you know, a new one would probably not hurt, and they're about, you can buy them, they're readily available, a rubber grommet nylon thing goes in there. They're about 10 bucks, 10, 15 bucks, which is expensive for what it is, a piece of rubber and a nylon plastic. And the oil cap just blows my mind. They're all about 50 bucks. I just don't get it. Needs a plug in the back here for the power brake booster, or your PCV if you have California emissions, and it needs a plug over here where the ported vacuum originally was, which I have the little fitting, so if it's something to where you need the fitting, I'm going to keep the fitting unless you absolutely need the fitting, but generally I don't like to run myself. I don't like to run ported vacuum to the vacuum advance. I like, especially on Chevys, I like to run manifold vacuum on a Chevy. That's the way they were designed. You get a smoother idle. I don't know, they just seem to run better. Anyway, there's complete intake and carburetor if you want to change your 283 2-barrel to a 283 4-barrel. You'll have to reuse your thermostat housing, which is the same. Again, your oil cap. I might have a throttle return spring. I have a ton of them. I'll have to look, but no guarantees. You may need that too. You obviously have to use your coil and your distributor and your hold down and all that stuff. You're getting what you see here in the picture, and like I say, I'll put a price in the description. You want to see me rebuild this new old stock 59 carburetor, and I'll use these tools. I do have a kit in this box also, so I have another carb kit here, and I even have a really good quality accelerator pump. When you use the leather on the pumps, you got to make sure that you soak them in mineral spirits or transmission fluid or gasoline or something overnight to soften the leather, and then you can spread it open. Leather will hold the, it's a little more ethanol tolerant, but it's a little more work when you use them to rebuild the carburetor. It's not just a matter of let's just throw the carburetor together with it dry, because it won't work if you do that. It will not pump fuel unless you get that cup saturated first. Anyway, we'll use this kit and we'll rebuild this carburetor. Leave a comment if you want to see me rebuild this. I mean, it's the same as this, so it's kind of be pointless. And it took me probably 3 times as long to rebuild this carburetor videoing it than if I just sat here at my bench and rebuilt it. I could have probably done it in an hour. But this is the 3rd day, and I just work on it a little here and there. But anyway, that will be it for this video. If you like it, you can hit that thumbs up icon. That certainly helps. Share the video, that helps. And thank you for watching my videos.